John Cowan, thank you so much for joining me today. And can I just say, bro, before we go any further, I'm going to take your word for it that you're a real man, that you're a man's man. I mean, you've got a beard, for heaven's sake. What else proof do we need?
Well, that's right. No, but there are tests that men feel like they're being subjected to. I recently was in Wellington
Yep.
on holiday, and I had to take my caravan to get repaired. And
Okay.
when I got to the place, there was a long, narrow
Oh,
drive
my
down to the
goodness.
guy's workshop.
Yeah.
And I sort of lined it up a bit. And then I said to the guy, "Oh, why don't you back it in?
Yeah.
Because you've got more experience and I don't like backing trailers." And he's, "No, you got to learn sometime." Now, he was one of these older tradie
Yeah.
types. And
Was there another
honestly, I
caravan place in town that you could have gone to? Because that's what I would have done at that point. I mean, honestly, I have too much self-respect to drive a caravan anyway. However,
oh
oh, shots fired. However, yeah, at that point, I would have given up. I'm quite happy to.
no, at that point, I would have been quite happy just to set fire to the car and caravan and walk away. And so he stood there with this sort of condescending smile on
Oh,
his
good.
face, giving me these mysterious gestures and hand movements and things while I backed the trailer into his garage,
Yeah.
sweating like a pig. And and I felt 4 years old. I
Wow.
felt, he was probably thinking in his own mind he's being helpful, but I just felt I'm being tested. And if any
Oh,
man has ever taken a trailer to a recycling center,
yeah.
that's another man testing center where you're supposed to back your trailer up.
I do have a solution to this one, actually.
Mm,
One of my sons is much better at backing trailers than me, so I always take him with me. Father and
yeah.
son outing, and he backs the trailer for me. So yeah, here's one I prepared earlier. Uh,
That's a great crib. That's a good way around that. But
yeah.
you wouldn't think that men would feel vulnerable in these situations, but I think we do. I think it must be. I've never tried to back a boat
Uh,
a launching. Well, I don't even know what they're called. What are they called? Boat
boat
ramp.
ramp, boat
But
ramp.
I imagine with everybody standing around watching you, that'd be terrible. But there are other little tests that men feel we're being watched about, like opening our own
Oh
jars.
yeah,
When someone hands us a jar to open,
got to do it.
and I will just open it and hand it back. But in the process, I may have felt like I was ripping the skin off the inside of my
Blisters have
hand,
formed.
but
Yeah.
no way was I going to give up on that. I just had to keep on applying torque, even though my arthritic knuckles were cracking and my skin was ripping. No, no, it's a man test. You've
Yeah.
got to open that
Got to
jar.
pass that one. Yeah.
Yep. Taking all your groceries in,
Oh yeah.
to do two trips and is you have to hand in your man badge.
You're either
So
too
you've got
weak
to
or you've bought too many groceries, both of which are a fail automatically,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, you'll kick some of the groceries under a neighboring car um, rather than surrender the fact that you can't carry all your bags at one thing. But it's a very human belief that our value is not just indicated by the feedback from others,
Yeah.
it's actually created by others.
Mhm.
I think it's possibly because we're social animals. If our tribe declares that we're useless or weak or something, we are useless and weak.
Yeah.
And economics works that way. You
Mhm.
just think of this whole concept of brands.
Yeah.
If you have a good brand, it is good, and it's determined far more by what people think of it than by any objective measure of its utility, its value, its worth.
Yeah.
And so we're very, very human in this area. We're constantly looking around us. What do other people make of us? What do they think of us? Am I considered worthwhile or attractive? And this is especially true, of course, if we're hunting for a spouse or seeking employment or
I don't
something.
think
It's
we hunt
very
for them
important.
anymore. That's not very PC. We shouldn't hunt. We shouldn't
Yeah,
actually take up weapons to
you
go
no
look
longer
for a.
hunt.
No, no, not for a
No.
marriage partner. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
I'm a refugee from the 20th century. Cut me some slack. But it's yeah, where we market ourselves. But I think most of us realize that there is a folly in this
Yeah.
idea that we place our self-worth, our idea of ourselves into the hands of others.
Hmm.
There is a weak that would be probably even sociopathic if we completely ignored what other people thought of us. There
Yeah.
might be some very valuable feedback coming from people, encouraging us to change our behavior and things.
Hmm.
So, because the way we impact our relationships and our other people,
Can
we've
we?
got to listen a little bit to what people think
Can
of
I just
us.
make a suggestion on this one? Because I mean, who gets to decide what it means to be a man? Actually, because I don't ever want to back a caravan. The only time I want to back a caravan would be perhaps down a boat ramp. I mean, uh, and in terms of jars,
Thank you, Jeremy Clarkson. Yeah.
just buy different packaging. Can we? I suppose. Uh, Take hold of no, I just about said take hold of our manhood, but that would be inappropriate. No, to take hold of the definition of our manhood
Yes.
and say, can we have some different rules? Can we define our masculinity in perhaps better ways? Can we rewrite the rule book on this one, John?
I will. I'll have a crack at that next week. I'll redefine manhood for you next week. This week, I'm sort of thinking though of the wisdom or folly of actually placing our sense of identity into other people's hands.
Yeah.
And I think we can agree that there's a folly in doing that. But there are tests that are valuable, not so much for assessing whether we're men or not,
Yeah.
but whether we're a good person.
Hmm.
I think that there are tests that we can set for ourselves about whether we are good, whether we need to improve, we need to work on our character.
Yeah.
And how do we know we're a good person? Researchers, when they're studying character and values, have a thing called the shopping cart theory. And I thought this was fascinating. The
Okay.
shopping cart theory is whether or not a person returns their shopping cart to the proper place in the car park at the supermarket.
Wow.
And they've done all sorts of experiments, like they'll quiz people in the supermarket about their values and their beliefs and things.
Hmm.
And they'll note them down and then wave them goodbye, but then they'll watch them. Are they the type of person that after they've loaded up their car returns the shopping trolley
Yeah.
to the right place, because it's widely recognized as the right thing to do. It shows kindness, it shows empathy,
Hmm.
but it's not enforced by the law. Nobody's going to come out and go, "Oi, put that back."
Yeah.
They're not going to fine you if you don't. And there's no reward for doing it. You've actually had to probably walk quite a long way, possibly in the wind and rain to do it.
Yeah.
And so there's a cost. And so it is an interesting measure. So are you the type of person Andrew, are you the type of person that returns your shopping trolley?
I very much am. And I'm not saying that to boast or to defend
Oh,
my
you're a good
manhood.
man.
And even to the extent where if there's another trolley on my way, I'll grab that one as well. Although not wanting to get too much of the shiny halo badge. But I think this comes from as a
There is a
teenager.
shine on the top of your head, but
Well,
I don't know if that's a halo.
Exactly. Pardon me, my comb over is showing. But anyway, I think that was because as a younger person, I was the guy responsible for collecting the shopping trolleys when I worked at a supermarket. I think it's a little bit of empathy from knowing if everybody bought their shopping trolleys back, my job as a teenager would have been so much easier.
Well, that's you see, this is actually just revealing that wonderful Andrew Urquhart character. It's showing your kindness and your empathy. But there are some other tests too. One of them is, how do people deal with serving staff at restaurants and
Yeah.
cafes? And I remember this was advice given to people on a date. If the person that you're dating is kind to you and rude to the serving staff, they're not a nice person.
Yeah.
And so the patience, the courtesy, the kindness that you show to your serving staff I think that's a real measure of character. And I am ashamed sometimes to hear that my generation, who are the ones that often sit there in the cafes being served by these lovely millennials and things like this,
Mm.
often the millennials have a very, very low opinion of Gen Xers and baby boomers because of our rudeness, our impatience, our complaints about the time it takes for things to come out of the kitchen and things. I think that's a measure of our character.
Mm.
Another thing is finders keepers. This idea of, wow, I found a wallet and had some money in it, and that was
Wow.
fantastic because I needed that. And that this is I'm amazed at how often people think that the moral rule is finders keepers. No,
Wow.
that's called theft
Theft.
through
Yeah.
finding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I think what we're dancing around here, John, is this whole thing: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That
yeah.
actually you have some empathy for the wait staff, for the guy who has to collect the trolleys, for the person that's lost their wallet.
I'm sure that there is a basis to that, but it's also just keeping an eye on whether or not we're surrendering to some baser drives. I was quite impressed to see a little program on Japan where they mentioned that 80% of lost wallets and 88% of lost phones
Wow.
end up at the police station.
Wow.
That's just a social a measure of social morality, I guess. How do you respond to someone who is different from you? When you suddenly find yourself on a bus surrounded by people of a different race, or you hear people talking in different languages around you, or you're subjected to perhaps a different approach to, say, queuing, when you're
Yeah.
overseas and
Yeah.
things, and it's a challenge to what the way that you would normally act, or there's different smells in a shop or something. How do you respond? How are you challenged by people that are different and other and have a different character? And I think that's a real big measure of our character. How do we respond to people that are other,
Mm.
people that are different in the way that they look, act, worship, whatever?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the tests that we can put to
And
ourselves.
and I think that is a self test, because often it is not just what we say out loud, but the things that we're muttering under our breath
Yeah.
in those moments that is the real test of character in that scenario.
That's right. There's all sorts of little things. And perhaps what I'm just saying today is let's just watch ourselves
Mm.
as we respond to letting people into queues and traffic.
Yeah.
Do we close up so that there's no chance of a person being able to put their nose of their car into the gap between
Yeah.
us and the car in front of us, or do we give them a wave and wave them in?
Mm.
How do we respond to people dropping litter and things? Do we sort of scowl at them, or do we just sort of follow up behind and just scoop it up ourselves? There's lots and lots of opportunities for you to be able to not just measure, but actually improve the way that you feel about yourself. So I guess a lot of these tests, you boiled it down to how would you want to be treated?
Yeah.
But another big test is how do you behave when there's no one observing you?
Yeah.
How do you observe? Because normally there's not someone there with a clipboard noticing whether you take that trolley back to the back there.
Yeah. No.
But I'm sure that everybody now who knows Andrew will be looking to see whether or not you
Yes.
do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even when it's
But
windy and rainy. Yeah.
mm,
Exactly. Well, John, I mean, we started off talking about manhood, but hey, maybe this is as good a measure of manhood as ever. And I think this is what I was getting at, that rather than defining manhood as macho or
yeah,
jar opening or trailer backing, that actually manhood being defined as somebody who is kind and considerate and puts other people's needs before themselves. I think for humankind, that would be a good way of measuring people's value and character, whatever gender they are.
I think you've landed that very well. Thank you.
Back to that nicely down the driveway. John, always a pleasure to chat. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.